Hello, everybody. Preston Poulter here with Lords of Iron. I got great response to last week's video where I was talking about Wizards of the Coast taking Dungeons and Dragons in an increasingly bland direction. Thought I'd do a follow up on that. In a bit of serendipity, DM Slayer posted a video short. I'm a subscriber to his channel. I recommend you be as well. And in that video short, he talks about, in his interpretation, why Wizards of the Coast will never touch Dark Sun with a 10-foot pole ever again. Let's see what he has to say.
You exactly why Dark Sun is a problematic campaign setting for Wizards of the Coast. Dark Sun prominently features slavery and genocide as a campaign setting.
I did, by the way, mention last week that that was the reasons they cited.
Now, those two things are not promoted, they are not glorified, and they're clearly seen as evil, bad things. And despite the fact that in normal campaign settings we deal with things like murder and kidnapping and other horrible things, stealing, theft, and all of these things, for whatever reason, those two evil themes, slavery and genocide, will 100% cause people to freak out on social media. And yes, Twitter, I'm looking at you. And people freaking out about it, even though it's clearly portrayed in the campaign setting that those two themes are evil and bad, is the reason that Wizards of the Coast will never make the campaign setting of Dark Sun ever again.
I think he's on the money on this one. Wizards of the Coast and other corporations that are seeking to court the millennial consumer are trying to cope with the fact that they don't like to be challenged. Millennials really don't like having their ideas challenged. They seek to be validated. And here's the thing, folks. If you meet someone in real life and you're not really allowed to disagree with them, you are only allowed to agree, or you are labeled as a bad or problematic person, that's not somebody you should really be hanging out with. That's a very narcissistic behavior. They will tend to engage in rather abusive processes to get their way, because a true friend or true companion would acknowledge that, hey, I see things my way, you see things your way. And that applies to you, the viewer. I'm going to say some things, you don't agree with it, that's fine. I don't agree with everything that DM Slayer says. I have a feeling if we were to sit down and talk about politics, we probably aren't going to agree on much, but we can still roll some dice, and that would be great. And that's the spirit I really seek to approach role playing games. Now, when it comes to Dark Sun, I think they're really missing out, because Dark Sun was, in my interpretation, TSR's response to kind of the zeitgeist of the 90s, particularly like Vampire the Masquerade, which came out and was really asking questions of, what are you willing to do to participate in a society that is openly corrupt? Which I feel is a very important question today, and particularly when it comes to the Twitterati and these corporations who are interacting with them and foregoing things like campaign settings or rewriting books. What are you willing to do in order to interact with these people who are going to place all kind of demands and, let's face it, fetishize topics like genocide and slavery? As DM Slayer points out, Dark Sun wasn't glorifying these settings. These were the things that the bad people were doing. But you get virtue points of saying, oh, I oppose slavery or genocide, and who's going to take the other side on that one? And because corporations seek to appeal to these people who cannot be challenged, as I talked about last week, we're taking fantasy in an increasingly bland direction. The thing is, Dark Sun poses some very interesting questions. Within the rules of that setting, you had two classes which specifically ask you, what are you willing to do for power? One is the Defiler. If you were going to be a magic user, there were two different kinds of magic users you could be. You could be a preserver, in which case you need twice as many experience points to advance the next level, as if you were going to be a Defiler. A Defiler mage drew their magic arcane power from the surrounding environment, and there was a scale for what level spell you were casting versus how many meters around you just turned to ash. Defiler mages ruined the environment, and that was why the Dark Sun world of Athas was as bleak as it was because of magic. And of course, that is clearly posing a question to us, the player. Is the society I'm participating in corrupting the environment I'm in? I feel this is another case of kind of the left eating its own, and that Dark Sun, which clearly is standing in the case of trying to promote an environmental message, ends up getting canceled by today's modern progressives because, well, it doesn't touch on their little taboos in the specific way they want to. And as I mentioned, these people don't want to be challenged. All they want is validation. And in that respect, Wizards of the Coast is standing up to hand out participation trophies. Now, here's another class in Dark Sun, the Templar. The Templar was a direct representation of the local sorcerer king, who, by the way, the book tells you these are the evil people. If you read the novels, the very first novel of Dark Sun opens up with a sorcerer king attempting to draw life magic from all the participants in an arena, snuff out their lives so that he could advance to the next level of sorcerer kingness. An idea that I think maybe they borrowed a little bit in the new D&D movie. They just toned it way down. But again, in the game, you can be a Templar. You can be a direct representative of someone who you know behind the scenes is evil. But of course, the citizenry isn't really allowed to talk about the abuses of the Sorcerer King. Any kind of mention of that will get you killed. And the Templar, just like the Twitterati, are representative of the ultimate in cancel culture that you know, if you really look at it, deep down, the people you're following and subscribing to are up to no good. They're not promoting good ideas. This is not good, wholesome stuff, but this is the system you've trapped yourself in. It's the system you're choosing to be a willing participant of, and that's how you get your magic levels as a Templar. Again, the game was challenging you to go, gee, is it really worth it to get the easy power, or should I take a slower road? I feel it's a shame this game is being forgotten. I think it's increasingly relevant to modern society. I just saw a headline yesterday. Germany is choosing to close all of its remaining nuclear power plants and increasingly rely on coal because of the environment. I have a feeling if anyone were to challenge Germany on this, you would get very much the same treatment as anyone coming out and saying, you know what, Dark Sun's not such a bad setting. Because nuclear power is another thing that the modern left just tends to taboo and fetishize and go, no, you can't be pro environment and for nuclear energy. And I want to say, if you look at the consumption patterns of what these people who claim to be so virtuous are doing, I feel like some of it could use a little self examination. Some of it could go, how much energy am I using up with my iPhones? And let's face it, when we look at the elite flying to conferences and all these other things that chew up a fair amount of energy, what am I willing to do when I'm participating in the society that I'm participating in? And this is the direct question that Dark Sun is posing. I'm really sad to see it leave. Quite frankly, I think if any setting needs to be revamped, that one could be revamped for whatever the modern 5th edition version 2024 rules end up being. This has been Preston Poulton with Lords of Iron. Thank you very much for tuning in. Take care, everybody.